Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are jumping into a really fascinating story.
It really is.
We're looking at an organization called Buddhist Practice Incorporated, or BPI,
Right.
and they spent 6 years in this just absolute dedication to philosophical study, and then they completely shifted gears.
A huge pivot
Yeah.
right into tangible, science-based service on a global scale.
It's a compelling narrative, and what's great is that our source material, it really gives us the full roadmap.
Yeah, we have everything. Documents on their founding, their whole philosophical underpinning, which they call right view.
And some pretty incredible numbers, these quantitative achievements over those first 6 years.
Absolutely. And then we have the full breakdown of the new venture they launched,
Yeah.
VitaChoice LTD.
So our mission for this deep dive is, well, it's pretty surgical. We want to understand the logic.
The why.
Exactly. How do you connect years of studying ancient scriptures to, a modern data-driven health company?
It's really the central question, isn't it? For you, the listener, it's about this, the synthesis. How do these ancient spiritual principles merge with the language that we all trust today?
You mean data, research, evidence?
Precisely. To solve very real, very immediate human suffering. It's all about building that bridge between deep thought and practical action.
Okay, so let's start with that foundation. 6 years. Before we even touch the science, the sheer dedication here is, well, it's stunning.
It is. The sources make it really clear this wasn't some part-time study group.
Not at all.
The commitment was total. The documents stress that for 6 straight years, the doors of BPI were always open every single day.
365 days a year.
Non-stop.
And I think this is a really important distinction the sources make. This wasn't out of some kind of obligation. It was a choice.
A choice for service. That idea of intention, it seems to be baked into their DNA right from the very beginning.
So what were they doing all that time? What was the focus?
It was all about foundational integrity. They were going deep into scriptures, contemplating what they call the Dharma.
Which is, in simple terms, the truth of reality and the path to freedom.
Right. That's a good way to put it. And they were meticulously examining the Buddha's full path. The sources are explicit. No shortcuts.
So when they talk about establishing right view, it wasn't just, reading a few highlights.
Yeah, it was 6 years of intensive, comprehensive intellectual work. The whole point was to make sure their philosophical bedrock was completely stable.
And right view itself, what does that actually mean in this context?
It means having the correct foundational understanding of existence, of suffering. The idea is, without that deep dive first, any action you take later
No matter how well-intentioned.
could be totally misdirected.
Exactly.
It all started with 3 founders, right?
Right.
Mentor Benny and associates Dawn and Bonnie.
That's right. They officially set up the organization in Darwin on November 22nd.
And from what the sources call those initial seeds of goodness,
Yeah.
what did the growth look like?
It was organic, but steady. After those 6 years of intense work, they've now welcomed 104 official members. But what's really telling is that it went global pretty quickly.
It did. Even while the core team was so focused in Darwin, their reach was expanding.
So can you break down that spread for us?
Sure. So you have the 11 core members in Darwin, but then there's 1 member in Western Australia, 6 in Vietnam, 2 in Japan, 1 in Taiwan.
And a large group in mainland China.
Right. The majority of the remaining members are practicing together there. It really shows that the intellectual work they were doing, the teaching, was powerful enough to cross borders right away.
That's impressive. But BPI, they don't seem to measure success by headcount.
Not at all. It's all about the depth of wisdom.
And that depth was generated by their core intellectual engine, which I guess brings us to the second part of their story.
The Buddhist Teaching Research Center. And this wasn't just some casual committee.
No, it was a formal subcommittee.
Formed by 8 dedicated preachers and disciples. Their whole job was to synthesize, teach, and document their findings, primarily online.
And this is where the numbers get, well, they're almost hard to believe.
They really are. The sources call it extraordinary dedication and hard work. And that's not an exaggeration.
Okay, so give us the top line figures. What did the center produce in those 6 years?
The combined effort resulted in over 18,900 hours of lecturing and teaching.
18,900.
And on top of that, they completed 134 in-depth research papers.
Let's put that 18,900 hours in perspective. That's like, what, almost 10 people working full-time, 40 hours a week for a solid year?
That's about the scale of it, yeah. It just underscores how serious they were about building that foundation.
They really believed that to help people, you first had to fully, deeply understand the root causes of suffering.
Absolutely. And the individual efforts are just as incredible. The sources highlight two people, Reverend Fafu and Reverend Yinfan.
And what did they achieve?
Each of them logged a record 3,600 lecture hours.
3,600 for each of them. That is, I mean, that's nearly 2 years of full-time teaching, nonstop.
You just don't see that kind of focus, especially in a young nonprofit.
And there are others too, right?
Oh yeah, Preacher Hugo and Reverend Yinyu, they each dedicated 2,160 hours. And Reverend Chanot, who was the key teacher there in Darwin, he contributed 1,980 hours.
So this was clearly not a passive learning environment.
Far from it. And on the research side, Reverend Yinjing is credited with 22 of those research papers.
Which suggests the 134 papers weren't just, philosophical musings. They were rigorous, documented scholarship.
It's a massive intellectual legacy.
Yeah.
But this is the pivot point. This is the big question.
After all that, why stop?
Exactly. After 6 years of nonstop study, 18,900 lecture hours, 134 papers, why pivot from the purity of doctrine to hands-on service?
If you've achieved right view, shouldn't the work be done?
Well, the answer is in the very thing they were studying, compassion.
Ah.
The sources draw a direct line from all that deep wisdom to the mandate for practical action.
So how do they explain that connection?
They actually cite a specific teaching from the Avatamsaka Sutra.
Okay.
It basically says that enlightened beings, or Buddhas, are driven by great compassion.
So compassion isn't just a feeling, it's a driver.
It's the engine. It says they cultivate this compassion in response to the needs of beings. And it's through that compassion that they ultimately achieve complete enlightenment.
So the 6 years of study, it's cemented the understanding that real wisdom demands action.
Precisely.
Yeah.
They built the intellectual foundation.
Yeah.
But then, when they applied that knowledge to the world, they had a painful realization
Which was?
that despite all this wisdom being available, most people today are suffering from all sorts of physical and mental illnesses.
And they don't even know why.
They don't have insight into the cause. So if the suffering is that widespread and that avoidable, the mandate of great compassion says you have to intervene.
You have to do something.
Exactly. The sources say BPI felt called to emulate the 32 manifestations of Guanyin Bodhisattva.
What does that mean in practical terms?
It means you use whatever method works. You adapt to the needs of the person who is suffering to help them find freedom. So the 6 years, that was building the foundation.
And now it was time to build the house.
The action phase, mandated by their own wisdom.
Which sets the stage perfectly for their practical arm, VitaChoice. They're moving from the ancient text to the modern lab.
And that transition happened on a specific date, September 15, 2025. That's when VitaChoice LTD was founded.
It's the application of right view in the health sphere. I have to say, I like the name. It's simple.
It is Vita, life. Choice, well, choice.
And how do they frame that idea of choice in the context of suffering?
The sources explain that suffering lies in making the wrong choice. Or, more often, not making a choice at all.
Just living on autopilot.
Exactly, living and eating based on conditioning. So liberation, freedom, comes from restoring the power to make the right choice.
But they don't just leave it at make better choices, do they? They get very specific about the problem they want to solve.
This is where it gets really interesting. They pinpoint a modern medical reality. They argue that things like refined rice, refined carbs, fructose.
The usual suspects in modern diets.
Right. And that these dietary habits all contribute to 45 types of diseases. This is the tangible, measurable suffering that compassion demands they address.
It's still a big leap, though, to go from ancient Dharma to refined carbohydrates. Why that battlefield?
Because that's where people are suffering right now. The deep spiritual insight is that suffering has causes.
And they're saying that in today's world, a lot of those causes are sitting right there on our plates.
They are. It's the immediate daily cause of so much physical and mental illness.
So the method becomes key. They aren't trying to lecture people on philosophy.
Not at all. They recognize that to restore the power of choice to people in 2025, you have to use the language society trusts.
And that language is science.
It's data, evidence, clinical research. And they don't see this as a move away from compassion. They see it as the most effective expression of compassion for our time.
Offer a solution that people can verify and measure for themselves.
Exactly. The science is the language, but the goal is the same.
To remove the causes of suffering from the body and mind.
And restore that inherent peace and happiness. The wisdom informs the why, and the science dictates the how.
It's a complete integration. So looking forward, the documents lay out 3 what they call unshakable principles for the future.
Right. These guide both BPI and VitaChoice together.
What's the first one?
The first is foundational, charity nonprofit.
Okay, so no one's getting rich off this.
No. It ensures the whole thing remains a public good. It's solely for service, ruling out any personal gain. It keeps the motive pure.
And the second principle?
Science overcoming suffering. This just reinforces the methodology. It guarantees that everything they do is based on research findings, all designed to educate the public and help them avoid illness.
And the third principle ties it all back.
It does. Wisdom for well-being. This is the reminder to not just get lost in the data.
To remember the big picture.
Right. That suffering has causes, those causes can be removed, and that peace can be restored. That's the wisdom framework holding up the scientific method.
And what about the rollout plan? How are they starting this thing?
It's structured. They're starting locally in Darwin, then expanding across the Northern Territory, and then throughout Australia.
But they're also thinking globally from day one.
Absolutely. At the same time, they're developing the entire program to be accessible online globally. The intellectual work was global, so the action has to be too.
So when you connect all these dots, the goal isn't just about, better nutrition advice.
Oh, it's much deeper than that.
They're really trying to restore agency.
They are. The sources are clear. They are focused on restoring agency, choice, freedom from suffering.
Giving people the tools to look at their own habits, their conditioning, and make a different choice.
To shift from being a passive victim of that conditioning to an active participant in your own wellness, that, to them, is the ultimate act of great compassion.
This has been just an incredibly insightful look at how you build an organization on true philosophical rigor.
This is a powerful model.
BPI's story really is a perfect case study of wisdom demanding action. All that work. 18,900 hours of lecturing, 134 papers.
All of it culminating in VitaChoice, a science-backed, tangible initiative to relieve suffering.
The BPI journey really presents a potent formula, one that you, the listener, can actually apply.
It's a clear sequence. Deep, rigorous study comes first. That leads to a clear identification of where the suffering is, and that, in turn, mandates practical modern action.
It shows that true knowledge isn't just a place to rest. It's an engine for transformation.
Absolutely. And that really brings us to a final important question for you to think about.
Okay.
Where in your own life, your career, maybe your relationships, your own health, is your most deeply held knowledge just sitting there as pure theory? Where is it ready to shift from just understanding into a concrete, measurable action that restores agency and brings tangible relief either to others or even to yourself?
That bridge between knowing and doing.
That's the most valuable insight from this entire deep dive.